Welcome to Using Learning Style to Study More Efficiently in Nursing School. I think we sometimes do you a disservice by not focusing on this very well. I think a lot of nursing schools do have you take a learning style test so that you know that, but then we don't give you suggestions of how to change how you operate in the classroom or how you study based on your learning style. So that's what I hope to give you with this. And also, I don't think all instructors do a good job of addressing all the different styles in their classrooms. So now with this information, you can start taking some of that responsibility on yourself so that you can learn in the way that's most efficient for you. So you can see a lot of learning styles out there, but three primary styles, and that's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, tactile, hands-on. And there's a lot of websites out there that support the percentages I show you here, that about 60% of learners are visual, 30% are auditory, and 10% are more that hands-on. However, I would bet that varies by profession and even by gender, age, and I think that will probably vary by our generations too. Like the younger generation spends time on the computer, and I bet that's going to change those styles in the future. If you go to our website at pocketprofnursing.com, I've given you links to several online learning style assessments. So if you don't know what your learning style is, go there and take one or two of those assessments. I've done all of them. I got about the same answers on all of them. So go take that if you don't know your learning style. And so it's not just important to know what your style is, but to change how you study and how you participate in class based on that primary style. If you're doing well in school, you may not need to do that. But if you're struggling, I would really suggest that you try to change how you're learning, because the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. That's what happens when you continue to get the same grades and you don't change anything about what you're doing. So here's something tangible that you can do to see if that will make an improvement in your grades. So I'm going to start with visual learners since they're the biggest percentage. So they learn by reading or seeing pictures and words, and by watching and observing. So they remember information by how it looks, whether they remember where it is on the page, or that's written in green and it's in the upper right hand corner, that kind of thing. They can also picture what they're actually learning. These are the people that most of you hate, because it doesn't seem like they have to work as hard because they can remember by seeing. So some of just the habits that you might see with this, and of course these are generalizations, but and not always true, but they can be helpful. Tend to be neat and clean. You might be a person that closes your eyes when you're trying to remember something, easily distracted by noises, or having difficulty when someone gives you spoken directions. You say, could you write that down? Or wait a second, I want to write that down. So that's kind of how a visual learner looks. But what's more important is what you should do if you're a visual learner. So in class, sit near the front so that you can really see what's going on, because that's how you remember. Take notes, even if there's printed notes provided. At the very least, underline or highlight, because again, that's what gives you the visual tied into what you're hearing, is to do something with it. When you're studying, lots of things you can do. Underline information. Use colors, so you can color code things to highlight things. Draw pictures and diagrams. If you don't have them, draw them, and that can help you remember things. Use flashcards, but not like printed ones, although sometimes seeing the words is enough, but a lot of times having to write it will help you more, and it helps kind of cement that for you. And then try not to get distracted, because you're more prone to be distracted, again, by noises and even visually by people walking around you. And there's really no reason for you to listen to recorded lectures unless you're just actively taking notes. Maybe you missed it or whatever, because you're not that kind of learner. Make sure, though, that you're utilizing any pictures that are on slides to help you remember things instead of remembering those list of words. Use your pictures or go find pictures to help you remember. Auditory learners, that next biggest category of learners, learn by hearing. Also by asking questions and then participating in discussions. I mean, it may take you to get discussions going, and that's how you learn. You remember information by how it sounds, so you've got to hear it and understand verbal instructions better than written. So if you're given written instructions, you probably need to read them out loud to yourself. So some habits you might have. You hum or talk to yourself when you're bored. Oftentimes you take poor notes because you're trying to listen. Oftentimes you don't spell well because you try to sound things out, and we know, especially in English, that isn't necessarily how things are spelled. And oftentimes you're a slow test taker because you speak to yourself as you read, and that takes longer. So what should you do if you're an auditory learner? Well, in class, you need to attend because you need to hear it. Record lectures if you're not going to be there, and even record lectures if you're going to be there, because then you can listen to them again when you're studying. Obviously, sit where you can hear, and then ask questions and participate in discussions, because hearing that discussion helps you, and you may be the only one, to get it started. When you study, listen to recorded lectures whenever you have a chance. I have lots and lots of students to do this. So if you're walking the dog, listen to the lecture. Exercising, you've got an hour ride to clinical, listen to the lecture in the car. These will really help you if you're an auditory learner. Reading your notes out loud or your flashcards out loud, just even your text. So just reading, what will happen is, you may read every word, but it tends to fly over the top of your head and you don't remember a single thing you read. So out loud. And the best way for you to study is really with someone else or a group that will discuss things. You really need that discussion, not just reading your notes, but that back and forth discussion will help you. Finally, our kinesthetic or tactile learners. Now, of course, some of the things in nursing, like skills, have to be learned this way for everyone. But think of it in the broader sense. And this won't be a lot of people, but for those of you that are this type of learner, there are some tips that will really help you. So you learn by touching and doing in hands-on activities, which unfortunately we oftentimes don't have time to do in a lecture-style classroom, especially considering the volume of information that we have. So you are really going to have to take some responsibility for your learning. You remember information by physical movement and using trial and error. So some of the habits you might have are speaking with your hands, a lot of gesturing, having trouble sitting still. Of course, again, all nursing students that sit in a 3 or 4 hour or 8 hour class have trouble with this, so take that as you will. Need frequent breaks. You like to touch, like to pat people on the back or just reach out and touch someone. Typically, these are people that are athletic. Maybe you played sports in school and you really like that. And oftentimes you take poor notes too. So again, there's lots of things you can do if you're a hands-on or kinesthetic learner. In class, if you're talking about information and your instructor gives examples, or maybe you think of a patient that sounded like that, write that down, because those examples, those real life hands-on things will help you remember this better. Write notes under those pictures and illustrations because they won't really mean anything to you without that explanation. Volunteer for role playing, because a lot of people don't want to do that, and that will really help cement things for you. And then typing notes or writing notes may help you because you're using that tactile sense. Also, if you're taking a really long class, I had a class last quarter that we had 2 3 and 4 hour classes back to back, and so my second group, boy, they really needed some of them to get up and move around. So they just asked me and said, hey, I'm going to get up and move around a little bit during class. So your teacher may be okay with that. When you're studying, you need to physically do or act out what you're reading. For example, when I teach things like pronation, supination, I have the whole class stand up, put their hands out, and hold their hands up like they're holding a cup of soup and say, that's supination. Now we turn our hands over, that's pronation. When you're reading things, if you will actually try to physically do it, lay in those positions, sims and semi-fowlers, and do those kinds of things, that will really help cement things for you. You really need to take extra time to do things like case studies and lab activities. A lot of times you have those in your books as extra work and you have them on websites with your books. They will really, really help you if you're this type of learner, because then you put all of that into context. So yes, you're going to end up doing some extra work probably. In fact, you may find that the class isn't really helping you at all. Maybe you could do those case study things while you're in class. Don't tell your instructor you're doing that. You also need to really focus in clinicals and simulation, because again, this is where the information is cemented for you. This is how you retain it. So in clinicals, ask for patients with disease processes you're studying in class. And then maybe the information you heard in class, you tie that to your patient. Just be really careful that when things don't match up exactly, you're doing it textbook style. Remember it that way. You also need to do things to move around when you're studying. Walk around, chew gum, trace words with your fingers, take frequent breaks, but they got to be short. If you're using flashcards, maybe group them, stack them, so you're doing things that are tactile in nature. So hopefully this video really helped you decide what to do with those with your learning style that you know you have. You could also watch our test taking tips and why did I fail that test video. And then we're going to have some new Med-Surg videos and even an app coming soon. So keep your eyes open for those. Thanks for watching. As always, we welcome your feedback. So leave comments. That's why this video is up now, is because of some comments. Ask us questions. Click that little like or dislike button, click that share button, and that helps get us out to other people. And then subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll see our videos first.